Hello and welcome to Conversations, Inuit Identities and Vitalization, a collaboration between the Inuit Art Foundation and the Smithsonian Arctic Studies Center. My name is Heather Campbell and I'm originally from Rigolet, Nunatsiavut. I'm currently living in Northwest River, Labrador. Although we're all joining from remotely across North America today, I would like to acknowledge the land on which the Inuit Art Foundation main office is situated. It is on the ancestral and traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat, the original owners and custodians of this land. Today, this place is home to many, including a diverse urban Indigenous community of Inuit, First Nations, and Métis. So Nakumik and Tungasugit, thank you and welcome. This is the second talk from our collaborative conversation series, and we will be co-hosting a total of 6 live webinars across 2021, bringing together Canadian and Alaskan Inuit artists across what is now Canada and Alaska for moderated discussions with audience participation, providing information and insights on subjects important to Indigenous communities. This series is a partnership between the Inuit Art Foundation and the Smithsonian Arctic Studies Center. On behalf of everyone at both organizations, I'd like to thank our advisors, Sonia Keller-Combs, Casey Puruk Kungmigu Hobson of the First Alaskans Institute, Krista Uluyuk Zawadski, and Takwalik Partridge of the Nordic Lab at Saw Gallery for their generous knowledge and guidance. Our moderator today is Dr. Heather Igloliorte, who is Inuk, originally from Nunatsiavut. She holds the Tier 1 University Research Chair in Circumpolar Indigenous Arts and is an associate professor in the Department of Art History at Concordia University. Dr. Igloliorte was also the lead guest curator of the inaugural exhibition Inua at Kamayuk, which is the Inuit Art Center at the Winnipeg Art Gallery. Our speakers are Christine Tootoo and Allison Akootchook Warden. Christine Tootoo is a film and theater actor, recently starring and collaborating in Kiviuk Returns, Kaviavut's Inuit theater epic that toured Southern and Northern Canada in 2017. She has also completed 2 residencies for new productions, Inuktitut, which toured across 5 cities in Western and Northern Canada, as well as Ikumagialit, which premiered at the National Gallery of Canada. Allison Akootchook Warden is an Inupiaq installation artist born in Fairbanks, Alaska, with close ties to Akootchook, Alaska. Her most recent work, Siku Siku, debuted at the Arctic Arts Summit in Harstad, Norway in 2017. Warden received a 2018 Rasmussen Individual Artist Fellowship in the field of new genre. She intends to travel to Abu Dhabi to do research for Everybody Will Be a Millionaire, a collaboration with Inupiaq photographer Brian Adams, which will debut in 2024. For more information about each speaker, including links to their websites, please visit the event sites through the links provided in the event invitation. I think we're also putting them in the chat. There you can also find a list of resources about the topic we're going to discuss, and it's available for you to explore at your leisure. Now I'm going to pass it off to our moderator, Dr. Heather Igloliorte, to begin the conversation. So Nakumik, thank you, Kuyanamik.
Thanks, Heather. Nakumi. Good afternoon, everybody. Unasakut. I'm so happy to be here. I will apologize in advance if you hear dogs. I've got 2 of them. Like Heather said, I'm Dr. Heather Igloliorte. I'm coming to you from Jojage or Montreal today. And my internet is also a little bit spotty, but I hope that doesn't become an issue. I'm so thrilled to be invited to moderate this panel. And I just want to thank Heather and Dawn and Catherine and the whole advisory group, the Inuit Art Foundation, for inviting me to be here. I'm also the president of the board of the Inuit Art Foundation. And so very, very happy to be acting in this role. One of the themes that the project advisors thought would be really useful to talk about is the idea of culture appropriation and cultural appreciation, and how this can happen not only outside of the culture, others appropriating from or thinking they are appreciating Inuit culture, but also how it can happen through different Indigenous groups. So pan-Indigeneity being a particular concern that was raised by the group, and thinking about even Inuit to Inuit and wondering, how that works across various different communities and so on. Some things are okay to share across Indigenous cultures, and some are very specific to place and community and family. But we also need to recognize that sometimes it is not that we are divided, but that we have been divided by national borders. For example, those kind of arbitrary border between Alaska, Canada, and Greenland, or by provincial or territorial borders, like Nunavik being a part of Arctic Quebec, but why the border is there and where it splits into Nunavut, the Inuvialuit region, and that's it. And so we think there's a lot of work that can be done to bring us back together as well. And today we're going to talk about that, these kind of sometimes tricky issues a little bit together, and talk about some of our experiences. We're super fortunate to get to speak to Christine and Allison, who are both visual and performing artists. And so I thought that a great place to start might be with Christine first in the performing arts. It seems like an obvious place to start there might be to talk a little bit about your experiences and what you've seen and witnessed. Christine?
Hi everyone, I'm Christine Tootoo. I'm from Rankin Inlet, Nunavut, and I'm here currently. So I've been performing since 2009 actually. And I started at a young age learning how to throat sing and drum dance, sing pisit, and learning contemporary Inuit songs. So through all of my years of performing, I've learned that it's even kind of tricky to share different types of performances within Inuit Nunangat. So the important thing is to have someone, I find, to have someone from that region where that performance is made included in the performance. It's like during Kivik Returns, we made sure to include someone from the Inuvialuit region to be able to do Western Arctic style drum dancing, which is very similar to Alaskan style drum dancing, and like as well as having someone who's from the Eastern Arctic, where I'm from, in other regions to perform throat singing. So those are the kinds of things that come to my mind when I think of sharing performance within the Inuit regions. And it was a very long process for me. Like I said, I've been performing since 2009, and I've learned that it's not always appropriate to do different kinds of performances that other Inuit do without them being there. And that doesn't just apply to performance, it can apply to many other things like sharing patterns and maybe even tattoo styles. I don't know a lot about tattoo styles from the different Inuit regions, but those are the other things that come to my mind when I think of sharing things amongst Inuit. And on top of that, sharing throat singing with other Indigenous peoples across Canada and internationally. It's important that if you're going to throat sing and you're not someone who's from where throat singing originates, you have to have a partner who is where throat singing originates. Anyone want to add on to that, or kind of how are we doing this?
It reminds me, we had a couple of years ago, I was part of a project called the Inuit Blanche that happened at St. John's. And that was, we brought in artists and performers from all across Inuit Nunat and had them and did a bunch of different activities. But one of the ones that we did that took place over the course of a week was we had a pair of throat singers from Nunavut and a pair from Nunavik and from Nunatsiavut, and they compared songs, because there's a set of songs, but then they're a little bit different in each region. And so they got to kind of examine together and explore the differences between them. And then they did a 6-person throat singing performance on the final night. That was really kind of magical. But I think, like you're saying, it's really important that is done respectfully and responsibly. Allison, did you have anything to add to that? I know you're also a performance artist.
No, but I think that I'm in agreement with what she said about the throat singing. I know it's not from my region, and I've tried throat singing with people from that region, just kind of in a let's try this, or let me show you how, kind of, and I'm okay, I'll try it with you. So I've tried it before, and it was from someone who was trained in it, and so it felt good, but I haven't thought of integrating it into my practice, because I can say my own people from my region don't have that practice.
Well, maybe we could talk about one that you do have a lot of experience in. I don't know if everyone can see Allison's beautiful face, but you have been tattooing and have been tattooed, exactly. And Inuit tattoo designs is another area that has been sometimes contentious, but access to knowledge about Kakanit and Tunit by region is also inconsistent and can be hard for Inuit to access in general. For example, in Nunatsiavut, we were colonized several hundred years before the rest of the Arctic was reached by the outside world. And so it was before the invention of the camera. So we don't have photographs of Inuit women from our region. We do have paintings and some drawings, but they're quite modest. So, we have some facial markings that we've seen, but we don't necessarily know what the body and arm and thigh tattoos would have looked like exactly. Whereas in other places, we have really extensive and detailed photography to draw on. In addition, the records that do exist are not always easy to access. What should Inuit who want to reclaim this practice do, and what should they be cautious of?
I have been learning about the tattooing practice kind of in the background with Marjorie Tabone being my mentor, and she lives here in Fairbanks, where I am now. So that's been really great to see her on a regular basis and have these kind of conversations with her, because she's definitely a leader and a trailbreaker in this field, and which is great. I think, for myself personally, in my own region, we don't have these kind of markings, or to my own family knowledge and from my own elders, we had the chins, but we don't have any stories of people from our region having this kind of markings around the eyes. But my auntie, who's now has since passed, before she passed, I had talked to her about wanting to get another facial tattoo. And I'm sorry. And she said, I was going to get something like this. And she's like, no, don't get that. Get what I would always want. I always wanted this. And this is what, if I was brave enough, I would get this. And then she drew for me this marking. So I was like, okay, Auntie, I'll get that. But there's, like you said, there's a lot of people working, I feel like, in satellites around the tattooing and doing the research, like Marjorie's getting her master's degree, researching these designs and so forth. but there's a lot of questions and unsurety about what to do and what design. There's a spectrum of thought around tattooing, and so some people are way on this side and some people are on this side in terms of how to think about it. I really look forward to when all the people who are working to revitalize this practice come together, even virtually, and talk about these complex layers within the practice and how to bring it back in a way that makes everyone feel good, and that they're honoring the traditions. So, but for myself, because some of the designs, we don't know what they mean or what they're attributed to, I created a series of new designs that I feel confident, like, okay, I know what this means. I know what the symbolism is. I know why I created this around this. It is based on something that's Inupiaq that we had designs for. So I was like, okay, now here's some new designs that I feel more comfortable using because I know what the meaning is, and it's an extension of what is already part of our practice. So for me, that solved a lot of issues in terms of who I could give it to, or how they're used. So that felt an empowering, and I talked to my elders about what I was doing in the designs, and there was some agreement with that. So that's good. Yeah.
When I was getting ready for my first tattoos, I was also Marjorie, and we had long conversations around what it should be and what it could be. And ultimately we ended, I feel like I don't want to show them now, but ultimately we did end up adding in, like, they're mostly traditional, but we added in some symbols that are from our material culture that I haven't seen in tattoos, but that go back on ivory carvings going back millennia. And to me, that was really important because I'm an art historian. I like to work with our material things. And like, there's also that, we don't know exactly everything. We don't have records of every pattern that was ever tattooed. We don't know for sure that we do, and there's no way to know. And so I think that, like, taking cues from what you're saying about like the ability to innovate within our own cultural framework, I think is important, but also it's also really important to be respectful of pattern and so on. And I'm looking at Christine's fabulous earrings, and it's making me think about something else. It's like, I can see through the screen, like that those are very distinctive. Are they by She Was a Free Spirit? Are those Erica's earrings? Or maybe I can't see them quite big enough.
No, these ones are by Elizabeth Tiga. They're made
beautiful.
out of beads and polar bear.
I was looking from one side and I thought I saw the black and white. Erica does the design that is from like Delta braid. And so that's a very distinctive pattern. And when I see it, I can recognize her work. And then like there are other people who've worked really long to develop really distinctive jewelry styles. And I think that also relates to Inuit clothing. I think is kind of a third area that we could talk about. Textile and clothing production is another big area where Inuit are inspired by and share from another. Why don't we have pattern libraries? And what could this look like in the future? And I think there's good reasons for having pattern libraries, and then there's also good reasons not to have pattern libraries in communities or online. What does it look like in where you are? What's it like in your community? How do you get your patterns?
Being 18, 19 years old, and it was really important for me to get a pattern from my great aunt to make a tiklooks. And so she took the time with me to make a pattern for me, for my body at that, or I might have been older than that because we were able to expand upon the pattern as I expanded. But I just remember sharing that cultural knowledge, her giving me that pattern and me making a paper pattern from her pattern and her working with me. She's not here anymore. And how important it was to have that family pattern. I also think about family designs for kupaks or for the for the trim
Mm.
at the bottom of the, quotes, and how, looking back at photos, I do have a lot of photos of my great grandmother's designs and my grandmother's designs and my mom's design. So I'm been designing my own kupak, taking those as reference, and it's not so easy to design a kupak, but it's a good puzzle. So that's my as far as having a pattern library, I think there's hesitancy towards that. In terms of access, I don't feel the pattern my great aunt gave me is pretty similar to Akootchook patterns probably throughout the whole Arctic slope. So our neighboring villages and so forth, it's probably pretty close to what someone else in Utqiagvik is using, or someone in Point Hope. It's pretty much a similar style. It's not exactly what my great aunt gave me, but it's a similar style. I would feel comfortable putting that pattern up for a regional, for the North Slope, but I'd have to talk to my elders about it and what they feel about it. What do they think about pattern sharing? I think it's always good to touch base and really explain to an elder what we're thinking about, and then giving them enough time to really think about it and then respond, and to talk to a few people in the community before doing something like that. Yeah. Okay.
I think that's very true. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking, like with oral history, like paper patterns are also a very new thing. Like, I know that my grandmother used the length of string method to measure people, and like just cut from memory exactly, and it would fit perfect every time. So maybe that's also a part of what's feeding into this, because it is kind of a new thing, and now it's not maybe as intuitive for everyone as it would have had to have been not very long ago. Christine, sorry, what were you going to say?
Yeah, like pattern making was always something that Inuit knew how to do just by hand and not copying, paper patterns.
Yeah.
And something they would always do was like measure with their hands or their forearms to suit it to the people that they're making it for. And also they would make like the siniksak, which is like the edging, a different design for their family. So one thing I know is back then Inuit women used to Akootchook their pattern designs, like they would not want to share them because they made it themselves, and basically everyone knew how to make patterns. So like, why would I share my pattern with you if you know how to make? And I think that like a big thing about that in my mind is having to do with individuality. Like, we're all individuals, and we need to have something to identify ourselves as individuals with. And a lot of that was through sewing, because we sewed for survival and also for beauty. So it wasn't always just survival mode. We had the time and the means to make something beautiful for ourselves and for our family. So there was always a lot of work put into sewing, and when beads came along, beading. My namesake and my ama, she's my namesake, and she was also my great grandmother paternal side. She made beaded duiliks, which is the really heavy beaded amotics. And there's actually one on display at the visitor center here in Rankin Inlet.
Wow.
if I was ever to try, no, not if, when I try to start making a beaded tweed, like I think I'll try to make her design first, just to replicate it so I can have one for myself with her design. And I think that's something that's like allowed within family members to do, to recreate your family's work. And if I got any pushback from my dad's aunts or uncles, then I would have to listen to them. But I don't think they would push back on me trying to copy her stuff. And I wanted to get back quickly to what Allison was saying about knowing what your design is when it comes to tattoos. Like, we don't all have for sure a definite answer on what every design means or what every design was before. But if I was to sing a pisok, which is a traditional Inuk song, I would have to know who made the song and why, and like what's the story behind it, and all. I would have to explain those kinds of things to be able to sing pisit, and that's something we try to work on I try to work on as a who's learning pisit, to make sure to know who made the song, where they were from, and why the song was made, so that the story lives on and the person who made it lives on. And that contributes to our oral history. We're people with the oral history, and that got very interrupted when colonization came, and that's something that we're working to regain, is oral history, and not just having it orally, but having it available to Inuit around Inuit Nunangat.
So what are some strategies that we can use in the present to begin to be reunified across the Inuit Nunang, or Nunangat in Canada and Inuit Nunang, circumpolarly? You know, if how can we stop to think across these geographic boundaries that have been imposed upon us? And I always, going back to Marjorie, I think about this story that she told me last year about, she was traveling into Canada with a moose hide and a jar of moose brains that she was going to use to do a moose hide tanning camp. It was like the second stage of her moose hide tanning camp, and got stopped at the border. And thankfully she got stopped by a nice or respectful border agent who was like, "What are you doing? What is in this jar, and what are you doing with like a brain in a jar?" And so she explained to him what she was doing, and that they ultimately allowed her to cross into the country, cross into Canada with it, because they said the moose goes back and forth. And so like the animal itself is not, a species from this side of the border or the other. So like, what can we do to make it more and more so that way? And I will say, like, this year when we were curating Inua, we actually lost an artist from the exhibition because they couldn't, I think they got very frustrated with the process of needing to show documentation about where the natural material that was included in their artwork was from, because they found it on the land. And so, the border was insisting on documentation for something that they, probably picked up on the beach. And so like, it actually led to us not being able to show one of the artist's works in the exhibition, because they pulled out of frustration for having all this like sort of paperwork and regulation imposed upon us. It's something that I think about a lot in the work. I wonder if you have any reflections on the challenges of being sort of divided this way. Has it come up for you? Have you been stopped at the border with your like, had your sealskin?
We have a back way to the Canada from Kaktovik, so we just take a boat and there's no border patrol over there, but not that I'm aware of, because it's just a short boat ride.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of back and forth from Kaktovik to Aklagavik, and a lot of cultural exchange from my village to, like people coming over and us going over there. A lot of people from Canada move to Kaktovik and they go back home to visit. And we have someone over there named after our people in a village over here. So, but I was thinking about this, what you were saying about Inuit. There's a lot of diversity amongst the Inuit people. I was in Toronto, and we made there was all these Inuit artists together for this event or art something. But each of us, so we were at dinner, and each of us were pretty much representing a different region. I think we had pretty much someone from every region of the Arctic. So we were starting to make a map of the different peoples. And they were like, these are this people, in Inuit. So they're like, this is the something mute, this is this. And so we were making a map of the Arctic and the different things. And the consensus among the artists at the table that were representing these different regions, we were like, no, we are all Inuit. We are one nation. That was the biggest thing that came from that. I was like, but we're, I was like poking and they're like, no, we are one nation. We are all Inuit. We are one nation of Inuit people. We are the same people. So that really gave me a lot of spirit when I heard my own people, when we were talking and reflecting around our cultural similarities, and we were like, oh wow, we do that too. And it was just a lot of connection, a lot of excitement, and then a lot of pride in being one Inuit nation. We are all Inuit people. I was really encouraged by that conversation, and I hope that we can have more cross-regional conversations with Inuit artists, like maybe in a format like this, so people can hear us talking and working some of these ideas out together. That's what I think of when we used to travel. In my village, we have a story of the Utukagamute. They broke at the certain river. So there was something that happened at a river, like a conflict. And the people who wanted to walk away from that conflict started going east, and they stopped along the way, the Utukagamute, and they got to Kaktovik. A lot of people stayed there, and there's people going, there's Utukagamute along the way, and some of them were like, we're going to keep going this way, we're going to go see what's over there. And so but we will see you in the future. And you will know it's us because of our language. It will be the same. This is a story that my mom told me. So that's her language in there. And then sure enough, they made it all the way to Kangak. I might be saying that wrong. Greenland, a community way in the north. And they speak Inupiaq like we do in Kaktovik, the same dialect and sounds and words and everything. It's not Inuktitut or Greenlandic, it's Inupiaq.
Yeah.
And someone, a shaman type person, he's self-proclaimed, he came to Anchorage for an art thing. And then my mom happened to be in town. And so we had a dinner or something at someone's house. And they had this teary-eyed reunion. And they said, we made it to the future, because they were speaking the same language. And he told the story from his point of view. So that's another story of how we're connected across territories. And that was they still speak Inupiaq fluently, or our dialect in Kanak. So that's and there probably are others along the way.
haven't had personal experiences with issues across the borders because I haven't been to Alaska yet. I've been to Greenland a couple of times, but I wasn't carrying anything between them. But one thing I always want to get from Alaska's Inupiaq Yupik made earrings that we can't share across borders because they're made out of ivory.
Yeah.
I always say our ugly colonial borders stop me from buying my Inuit art.
There's, such a gulf in difference between walrus ivory and elephant ivory, and yet somehow we still have this weird global imposition put upon us. Like there's lots of little things like that, or like even with arts funding, like it depends on what province you're in, but the provinces were imposed upon us, so we didn't join the provinces, we were put into the provinces in most cases. So
Yeah.
it like continues to be this thing that I think that I'm so excited to see that we're moving in a different direction. I guess that sort of leads to the next question is, what's your vision for the future? Like, what would you like to see happening in terms of the revitalization or the resurgence? Like, what are you getting excited about seeing coming back now? And where do you want it to go?
I guess being able to acknowledge where specifically different types of art, whether it be performance or sewing or visual or even food, different types of art being shared amongst Inuit while acknowledging where they come from, but in a respectful way. And one thing I really want to see is and I have been seeing is like a resurgence in being able to make our own patterns and our own PC, like modern day PC. I don't know what the English version is of it. The traditional songs, because back then Inuit used to make songs about anything on the land, traveling between communities or experiences they've had in their lifetime. I want to see a resurgence and being able to make PC in Inuktitut or Inuktitut, and being able to share those amongst Inuit across Inuit Nunat. Yeah, and pattern libraries. Pattern libraries where you can practice sewing different regions kinds of without profiting out off of other people's other regions type of sewing. That's something I would really like to see.
Me too. I think a way to do that feels respectful, I think, is if two people from different regions do something together. So like I've been wanting to make a style of parka like from way around on the east side with a big hood and the interesting sides that go up. I've thought about that kind of clothing, and even in my own village, there's been some interest in making different styles of atigis and a lot of curiosity about wearing those kind of parkas and trying them. I think there's some excitement, like, I want to try that kind. And and you probably want to try my kind. And so I think when it happens, I think a good way to explore that is, people from a region that has that style and someone who has the other style can cross communicate and, and talk to the, it's, I think elders people might be intimidated, communicating with elders like, we're going to do this new thing. But then I'm always surprised at how open-minded and flexible and encouraging and groundbreaking elders are when you talk to them about ideas. They're like, oh no, you could do, they take it further. And the elders I've talked to are very supportive of new ideas, and they want to be included when things, like, oh, you're doing that? Cool. But I agree. So thinking of a vision for our people and what gets me excited. I would love to see more communication across territories and with different artists and just the people also. So that we can have more interchange. I'd love to see more Inuit art exhibits, traveling, touring, curated by Inuit. I'd like to see more, just because you don't like someone or they hit you the wrong way, doesn't mean you have to start a whole, thing against them or something. Like, this person is this, so I'd like to see more softening and, like, okay, that person is doing this and I respectfully allow them to do what they're doing. And and they respect me and we have a difference of opinion on this, yet they are Inuit and they're doing work and they're doing positive things for their communities. So no matter what, I'm going to support them, even though it's different from what I do or what I might believe or how I was trained. So I'd like to see less of that. What is it called when that happens?
Lateral violence.
Yes, lateral violence. Yes, lateral violence, please. I think it can, it's too much and it's unnecessary when we're all Inuits working towards our people and towards the love of our people. And so I remember when I was leading a group of elders at AFN with Liz Hensley. And there was a discussion like, well, that's not our dialect and my dialect is over here and this is my dialect over here. So there was all this elders like, we can't do this. They're saying it this way and ours is this way. And I was like, you guys can learn each other's dialects. Isn't that awesome? And then when I framed it like that, they're like, I can learn how they talk in Kotzebue as opposed to Kaktovik. And I was like, you guys can learn a whole new dialect. You're still young, you got it. Let's all learn each other's dialects. And when I switched the framework towards that, everyone got excited. And the elders were like, oh, we can do this. We can learn each other's dialects. We can have more fun across the borders or more interplay and exchange and not be so heavy.
Mm.
So I'd like to see, for a vision, more communication, more collaboration. It'd be fun to have a Inuit Council of Elders that are around art, that are cross around the slope or, on the whole Inuit circumpolar region. That would be a fun group to learn from and ask questions of. I think including the elders is just super important. And yet you need, at some point you break away and like, okay, thank you. I'm going to do this anyway. Is that okay? Yeah, you could do it anyway. You'll see how it goes. I've done that too, but I've told the elder like, okay, I still want to try this. Okay, you could still try it. I don't know if it's a good idea, but you could still do it, kind of thing. Of course, it was not a good idea.
They have a gentle way of telling you.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's
not
why
gonna
they
work.
said not to do that. Okay, I get it now. There's,
You can learn it on your own. That's the
I
important
know.
one.
They're like, go ahead if you want to do it, because you'll see. And I'm like, okay, you're right. You were right.
There's a reason you've never seen anyone do it like that. Oh, that's awesome. Seriously though, that's a beautiful idea. Just thinking, you know, I could get a grant for that. We could do that. Like we could make that happen. I'm not that good at sewing, but I'm good at getting grants. I can help other people do the cool projects. I love that idea. That's the end of my questions that I had sort of pre-thought about, but I'm seeing that there's already a couple of really great ones in the conversation, and like Holly had a really good comment I want us to talk about, and there was another couple of things in the chat. I wonder, Heather, other Heather, if you want to come, other Heather from Nunatsiavut, do you want to come back and join us for the Q&A part? I'm just looking at the participant list. There's so many people here who could also speak to all of these things in really beautiful ways. And I just, you know, we're so glad to see all of your names, but unfortunately not your faces in this conversation. I can start by reading what Holly said. I don't know if it needs discussion, but I think we all probably agree that if we are the same people, Inuit, just colonized differently, and that colonization determined what part of culture was saved or canceled or banned, why not share those parts of culture amongst all Inuit? We are contributing to continued colonization by saying we didn't do that. You know, like that's not a part of our culture. And I think that's very true. And I think that sometimes there are things that circulate because of the church and because of colonization that, you know, that we believe that they are traditional, but they go back 100 years, but they don't go back 4,000 years or 6,000 years. And so I really strongly, wholeheartedly agree that we have, that we should be sharing and helping each other as we're all on this kind of path together in different stages. Allison?
I agree too. I think, I mean, that was the sense that I got from, I think if you talk to actual Inuits from those regions, then there's a lot of excitement and curiosity and support around sharing. So I think there is a spectrum. So I know there's people who are like, no, this is our region's thing and this is our thing and you can't do our thing. And I feel like I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum where I'm like, if we travel there or we have the ability to travel there or we're communicating with one another, then we would normally naturally share designs and culture. Like if I went to a certain place, I would probably be tattooed there, you know, like 100 years ago. Or, you know, like I think,
or like if you marry someone from somewhere else and then you do things like their mother does it instead of like, you know what I mean? Like your mother does it, like their mother does it. So that's also a thing, I think.
Yeah. So I, you know, I think I think Inuits are pretty self-regulating in terms of, I'm going to take these things and and then I'm going to go to H&M with it and I'm going to make all this money, you know, with artists. I don't see any Inuit super commercializing our traditional things, not intentionally or making a huge business, but maybe they do. You know, there's definitely non-Inuits who make kuspuks or atiklooks. I don't know where they got the pattern, but they have a whole business around it. Yeah.
I think there's also like, this, there is a sort of Western world's like a taking of things rather than a sharing of things, you know, or like an acknowledgement that this is something that you've learned from someone else. Like it's a whole different kind of a mindset around extraction, you know, taking it away and then taking it and claiming it as your own and not acknowledging where you got it from. And I think that maybe like you're saying, the way out is that you know, in an Inuit to Inuit kind of a sharing, to acknowledge like we're sharing, and like this isn't my pattern just because I made something in it. It's still your pattern, but you shared it with me. You know, like I think there's that kind of a dimension to it that gets tricky because of capitalism.
I think we still have a bit of time before we have to take questions, but I just wanted to make the suggestion to talk about the urban population as well. I lived in Ottawa for 24 years, and it's sort of a melting pot for Inuit from all of the regions across Canada. And, you know, we end up going to events together because of the like the friendship center type thing at Tungasabinga Inuit. And yeah, I always think about that younger generation that they're born down south and they're being raised down south. My daughter lived there for the first, 9 years of her life. How do we make sure that what they're learning and what they're seeing is authentic? But they're getting things from all different regions, but their family is from a particular region. Like, how do you navigate that sort of dynamic? So I wanted to see what you guys thought about it.
I don't have like a particular answer, but I can totally acknowledge that. I've seen that a lot with people I know from who live in urban regions in southern Canada. There's a difficulty for them to get knowledge on their specific region, on their specific family. I see that disconnect totally, and like it's not their fault at all. I want to acknowledge that I do see that, and I don't have a specific answer to that. I think it's just, it shouldn't just fall on the family who lives up in the north, but I think the family has a big thing to do with making sure that the family who lives in the south knows their specific designs, knows their dialect or things like that, like sharing food. Lots of people I know who live down south have a hard time accessing traditional food like caribou, fish, makdak, what's that, whale, igunak, fermented walrus meat, just like delicacies that we have access to if we go out and hunt just here in Rankin. Lots of people I know who live in the south don't have access to things like that, and I think family's like a big part of the answer to that. It's just, I guess, how connected you are to your family is something that could be a barrier to that, or not having access to elders just right there. Those are big barriers that I see. And even when I lived down south in Winnipeg for school, I was always craving country food and had a hard time accessing country food. And on top of that, learning Inuktitut, like I'm still trying to immerse myself around elders so that I can learn Inuktitut. And when I lived in Winnipeg for school, it was like 10 times harder because like urban areas, it's such a fast-paced urban life, you take 2 hours to get somewhere and 2 hours to get back, and then by the time you get home you're tired and you just want to stay home. So there's all these complex layers for urban Inuit to be able to access these kinds of things. I want to acknowledge that, and I see you guys. I'm not the one with all the answers though.
I think it's what you just said for the Inuits who maybe living in I grew up in an urban, in Fairbanks, but I'm a tribal member of Akootchook, and I'd go there throughout my youth and even now, and they come here. So I just had my uncle here from Akootchook for a while, staying with me, which is very fortunate for me to, have that access to the elder and all those things. I think when we're thinking about youth, Inuit youth in big urban areas, and maybe they don't have the connection as strong. Maybe it's strong in a dream, or maybe it's strong in another way. But maybe they don't know, or they don't know who to ask. I think that's why it's so important for Inuits to do things, and to support one another when they're doing things. And even if you don't agree with what they're doing, it's an Inuit person trying to do something positive. And because the visibility of more Inuit people creating, making art, films, clothing, everything, gives those young people a lot of things to draw from. I know it's not much, but it might inspire them to learn more. It might inspire them to do research on their people and their lineage. So I think the more of us doing work and supporting one another in the work, not trying to, start smear campaigns or things like that, or, like actually supporting one another and loving one another, I think, and encouraging young people to come up and do things too. I think the more Inuit artists and visibility that we have from our communities really helps all Inuit, and especially those who might not have the connection, because at least there's like a light post, like, oh, there's an Inuit person talking about Inuit things or making Inuit things. Maybe I could do that. And then they just referenced another artist. And so then they're like, oh, I didn't even know all those things. So I think it could be very inspirational for young people to see people like us. And there's so many more of us who aren't here right now in the screen. But I feel like we're like light posts and guideposts for those who are wanting to come back home. But they have home in their heart always, and they have home in where they're at. And there's no shame in coming from an urban area. It doesn't make you less Inuit. I don't feel like, I think you might not have learned yet how to do certain things, like cutting up a seal or things like that, living on the land. But it's still in them, in their spirit.
Dele Sambo says we need every one of us. There's only 175,000 Inuit members of the Inuit family in the world. That's like that's a small city in Canada. We think about that population, and it's actually pretty extraordinary how strong our cultural practices are, and how everything is coming back right now, and our sort of place of pride. I think that it's really remarkable, really, that we are where we are, given all of this. Someone asked if you could just both talk a little bit about how you got started. Like, how did you learn the practices that you do the most today? I'm going to start with Allison.
I grew up here in Fairbanks, and my mom, she passed away last year, but she led an Inupiaq choir, which was really cool. And then every week they would do a recording, and she had all these mics hanging from the upstairs, room. And then all the Inupiaqs the choir would gather, and she would record it with all these hanging mics on a tape, and then take the tape to the radio station in North Pole. And she had this production every week that she would do. And then once a year, she would do a play, all in Inupiaq. And I was an actress in the play one time. And so I grew up watching her engage with community, with art. and with music, and how she would pull everyone together. And so that's where I learned about, oh, that's something that I can do. I can pull people together with art and music from watching my mom do it. So when I think about how did I come into art, that's, I started acting. I was in a commercial at 8. I was in a play, at a young age. I did a monologue in middle school in front of the whole school, an acting monologue. So it was a very young age that I started thinking about theater. And I was pretty involved in theater from 14 to, my early 20s, doing a lot of different productions. I think the biggest influence has been my elders and my great uncles and aunts, and watching what they did with the fabrics they chose, with the art that they created. There's so many artists, in my family, everyone, I can't think of one person that's not an artist in my family in Akootchook. And they create all different kinds of things. So I think that brought me to art. I think moving to New York City when I was like 28 or so, and seeing how you can take an idea and really expand on it, and how information flows in a big, huge city like that inspired me. Is that answering the question? The question was, how did we get started? I think I was also encouraged to make art. I was babysat by Claire Fage, who was a prominent Alaska artist, a visual artist, a painter. And so she would work with me on creating art as a little tiny being. I was a little being in her house. So that definitely gave me some ideas. For me,
Allison,
I think the community is the biggest drive on why I create. Yes.
sorry. I think the question is maybe the main art practice as well that you do, the one thing you like to focus on. I would like to hear how you started tattooing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of kept like a back seat on the tattooing. I've said, once I finish my thighs, then I'll be more out there. But I guess I'm pretty out there right now. Yeah, let's see. So the installation is where I finally landed, that I feel that it allow me to use any of the tools, music, sound, music, smell even. I had an installation that had the smell of cooking pulla bear to give us a tone in the room, because it's pretty strong smelling. So I was doing theater, and I was kind of feeling like I was budding up the medium. The medium wasn't flexible enough to do what I was curious about doing. So I did more research on different mediums, and I came across performance art. Then I did a bunch of research on different performance artists and the history of that. Then I did research in installation, and like, okay, this is where it feels more like home. But I still love theater. I just love the openness of the installation and performance art aspects. I think for me, when I think about creating art, I think about my community, and I talk to my tribal leaders. And with this project with Abu Dhabi, I want to take a whole plane full of Inupiaks to Abu Dhabi, and a plane full of Abu Dhabians, to Akootchook, and have some cross-cultural interchange between the desert and the Arctic and tribal peoples. And my tribal leadership thinks that's really cool. They don't know how that will happen, but everybody wants to go to Abu Dhabi. So that's exciting. Most people do. So there's some curiosity there. And they definitely see the connections with the project that I'm making. And for me, that's important, that the people in the village on the ground can find meaning within the work, even though they might not be able to see it. They can, piece it together. So yeah, I think to answer your question, I started theater really young, and then I've always done music, and I've seen those as two separate kind of things going along at the same time, because I was raised around music with the choir and all that stuff. And I was composing songs at 6 years old, like just making music. And so now I'm creating Inuit songs with a drum, because the songs are coming through. They just come through the traditional songs. That's all I can say. Is it just like, okay, this is a song. Okay. So that's something that's come recently, like a few years, maybe 3 years now. I've been able to make traditional songs, new ones. And my people are really excited about the new songs and the new dances that are coming through. Anyways, yeah, so I think those kind of grew. And then I was like, I really want to do installation. I feel like that's where I can fully encompass an individual with my message or with what I'm questioning them about. And that interplay, I feel like it's more immersive. But I've been doing poetry. Because we can't really perform nowadays, except through here, I've been more doing poetry and working from the writing angle, writing essays and poetry to kind of go along with the culture, what's going on in the time.
I started throat singing when I was 10. I was living here in Rankin, and there was two people who were teaching young girls how to throat sing, and that's how I started throat singing. And I've been actively performing since 2009. So I was like 14 at the time. 10, 11 years now. Almost, no, 12, pretty much. I don't know. Anyways, so I joined a choir when I moved to Iqaluit, and it's called the Akootchook Drum Dancers, and we learned bisit and drum dancing and learned how to perform, like being present during performances and being confident in your performances. So that's how I started performing, and then I got more into it when I auditioned for a movie and got the role as Annie in the movie Iqaluit. And after that, I transitioned to theater with Qagyawut, and we did artist residency in Kingston and in Banff at the National Arts Center, Banff Arts Center. And we toured across Southern Canada and adapted the play into a youth workshop where youth learned how to do throat singing or drum dancing or bisit. And then they also learned the story of Kivil, which is what the play was based around. So I've been teaching youth across Nunavut, where I was teaching youth across Nunavut how to do traditional performance, as well as teaching them the story behind the performance. And then after Kivil returns, I got asked to be in Unikaktuat, which is an art circ production. And I don't know if everyone knows, but art circ is a circus from Igloliorte, and they pick a bunch of traditional stories that Unika and develop them into a play, a theater performance, which also had a circus aspect. So I like to tell people that I ran away and joined the circus for a bit after that. And that's how I got in. That's my history of performance, and that's how I started performing.
Hey, I'm just going to jump in to let you know that we're getting closer to the end. It's 12 after 4, and we're officially finishing up at 4:30. So I think we'll give a bit more attention to some of the questions that we've had coming in. So I can't wait to see what people are curious about.
There's a question that I'm going to kind of paraphrase, and it was about somebody's working on collecting Inuit tattoos, or a number of people who are doing this right now, and do they share this knowledge, or is there some gatekeeping happening in that? And I think it's an important question, because I think that, one of the things that we're talking about today is our fear around appropriation. And sorry, my husband is bringing me water and pouring it up the side. One of the things I think that makes it so tricky is because we are, we're coming back from a lot of different legacies of colonialism, and things being banned for being considered to be like heathen or even Satanist. We're talking about, throat singing, which is a game, which is an innocent game between girls fundamentally. And then, but for outsiders to sort of demonize that and think that there was something evil or sexual happening, and trying to take away sexuality from Indigenous peoples, as well as lots of other practices, tattooing, like just really imposing for a long time outsiders' values upon us, and enforcing that. And so there's a lot of fear around the appropriation of those things, because we're just getting them back and we're trying to make them really strong. And so when other people want to, I've been in the audience of things where people have said, hey, can I get Inuit tattoos? I think they're beautiful. I really appreciate them. Why can't I have them? And it is a very difficult thing, because we're right on the precipice of getting these things back. Please let us have our own culture. Let us have it, let us have it for a little while. You almost took it from us, and I don't mean you specifically, but I mean like the broader culture. Jump in, Christine.
Yeah. And one thing I think it's important to share like patterns and tattoos with other Inuit. I think that's important, and no one should be gatekeeping that knowledge with other Inuit. Yeah. But like non-Inuit, I think tattoos are a new way of us identifying as Inuit, like this is how we're Inuk now, because not all Inuit look the same anymore. Like some of us are light skin, blonde hair and blue eyes, and you can be Inuk. So to me, these are a way of us identifying as Inuit. So it's not appropriate for non-Inuit to get them. And it's okay that we gatekeep that for these things that we identify ourselves as Inuit with.
Did you want to add to that, Allison?
Yeah, I feel like there has been gatekeeping, or my experience of it has felt like gatekeeping. I'm not mad at it. It's just, I think we're just doing it for the first time, so we're not going to be perfect right off the get-go.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, intense feelings around it, and sometimes it can go like this without meaning to, or without feeling, the larger impact of how it's impacting other people. But, I think it's just a part of the process of unpacking this knowledge. There's going to be hurt feelings, or people holding on like this, or scared to let go, or not enough communication, or poor communication, or no communication. And that's just part of it. So we just need to be gentle and forgiving with one another, and like, okay, let's start from here. Let's let that go and start from here. I think that's an important thing to do with one another, is to forgive one another and start fresh. I think Inuits are really great at that kind of resolving conflict and moving forward. So I think it has felt like gatekeeping to me, but I don't think it will feel like that always.
It's true. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I mean, even that gatekeeping, like it still comes from a place of trying to protect culture, and sometimes it can feel like it's going in the wrong direction, but fundamentally it is about protecting, and maybe it goes too far sometimes, but that gatekeeping is, that's the sort of the end result, but it's because things have been taken from us or have been tried to be taken from us for so long, you know, and so it really is the end result of it has been a very painful time. So like for other, you know, for Inuit, it's like, you know, please continue to share and to share more, but for non-Inuit, you know, let us have it for a little while. We've had so much taken from us. Like, let us just do this work ourselves. You know, that's the tough part. I think we've probably got time for like one more exciting question here. There was a comment that I just want to share that someone in the comment thread in Inuk has said, you know, events like this talk are really wonderful for urban Inuit as well. I love the online cultural events. They really help me feel connected despite being one of a few Inuit in my city. And that's the thing too, is that like when you're in the city, you're not necessarily on your own. You're not even in your own sort of geographic region, because we moved to cities for various reasons, you know, and there's lots of people that would love to live up north, but they just can't get housing to go home and live in the north, or there's like all kinds of reasons for healthcare and access to different specialist forms of education that are really critical for Inuit to move. And like lots and lots of artists move all the time. It's not just like you move to the city and then you're an urban Inuk forever, or you move to the north and you live home forever. Like I know lots of artists who are sort of constantly on the move because of the nature of the art world in particular. But maybe we can, there is a question from the audience that said, what are some of the challenges in culture and identity as Inuit, and how, by the way, Inuit is already plural, so Inuits is not correct. It's how they say it in French, but it's not the right, that's like people's when you say it that way. It's Inuk is the singular. How can we support how can others support Inuit culture? I think, okay, so I'll start by saying the first part is let us have it. Like, that's my first start for supporting culture. But also I think and maybe some people in the audience are wondering, like, should they buy Inuit jewelry? Should they wear Inuit things? I think like it's great to support artists. It's, you know, hang the artworks in your home, wear the earrings. You might feel a little awkward if you're wearing earrings as big as Christine's, but like if you can rock them, but like buy real Inuit art, buy real Inuit jewelry, and you can always wear that stuff with pride. So that's something you can do, is you can follow artists on their social media, you can buy their work, you can support their careers, you can buy tickets to their shows, you know, download their music. That's where I will start. What do you think, Allison?
Yes, I mean, I encourage everyone to wear one of these if it's made from an Inuit person and that person sold it to them, or they got it, you know, even there are non-Inuits making Akootchooks, and I don't encourage them to buy them from those guys. But if you know, go ahead and wear the Akootchooks, I tell people, and buy the art. And if it's for sale, you bought it, then you can wear it. Don't make a pattern from it and sell it to all the people. Or, you know, what else were we talking about?
How can people who are not a part of our culture support people in the culture? What's the question?
Donate to Patreon. I have Patreon. You can donate to the Inuit Art Foundation. They're doing amazing work there. Different Inuit organizations. You can
great plug.
You can buy tickets, you know, you can support individual artists and just say, hey, do you have a PayPal or something? Or I really like your work. You have a Patreon or something, and just give them to directly, no strings attached. I think what happened, I think that another thing you could do is just do your own research, because there's a lot of questions that come and there's too many things. And so it's hard enough to manage, you know, information from your own peoples and things when the outside people are starting to take up time and resources with our brains. It's like, this is not a priority to educate you on what's going on. I'm sorry, I can't put you up on the list to talk to you about this. maybe you can go to the library and start to get some foundational research done. And then once you feel like you've done more, then we can have a more higher level conversation about it. But it takes a lot of time to educate someone who is just coming fresh to it. So it's good to take a step back and do a lot of your own education, and then come forward with the questions, and just realize that, you know, us as Inuit, we're fighting for our own people. We're fighting for our survival and our culture and our traditions and the future and children and this information. And so we're pretty busy with that alone. You know, we don't need to be educating non-Inuit people. You know, that's not a priority, at least for me. But when I make work with everyone in mind. So all the human beings in mind. So I do take them into account, non-Inuits, when I'm creating work, because it will be most likely seen by them. So when I'm thinking of what I do in my practice, I also include everyone. But it's hard to answer specific questions from people too much. You know, an example is this, some big TV producer in LA wanted an Inuit consultant on to make a Inuit animation, and they really didn't know anything about Inuit anything. And they had already gotten so far with the funding and all this stuff, like, no, we have the show ready. It's, you know, so-and-so goes to the village and then this happens, and they have the whole everything, and not one Inuit has been consulted, and all the money is already there and it's going to be made. And so then at the last minute, they're like, hey, can you, you know, come on board? And I'm like,
Rubber stamp it.
yeah, that sounds like so much work. I cannot do that in good consciousness. You have not done it in a good way. I don't care if it's on a big, huge national whatever, and, you know, I have this opportunity to play it, you know, on Netflix or whatever. You don't get to do that to me. That's not okay. Or to my people. You can't just, you know, do all the things and then just swoop in, and then I'm just like, see, it's certified. It's Inuit. We have an Inuit, you know.
It's,
I haven't seen a script, you know. I'm just like, you just want me to come in and read, you know, like, is this person going to sound Inuit? I mean,
it's
what
a
is going on
fantasy,
here?
right?
Yeah, it is. And so, yeah, so I didn't have time to deal with that kind of thing. So I tried to push them to people who had more time or might be more patient. And I just let it go, you know. So that kind of stuff happens. For me, I have to prioritize what I'm working on and who it's serving. Otherwise, I'll get caught up in all these tangents or something.
It happens. It happens a lot in academia in a like different, but exactly the same way. Really. Christine, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, it's important to buy Inuit made art and jewelry and promote Inuit artists without, you know, appropriating our tattoos and our culture. And that the way, I'm just gonna reiterate what you guys had said, is a way to support Inuit is buying art from Inuit and attending Inuit artists events like this.
There are more talks in this series coming up, Heather or Dawn. I don't know if you have anything else that you want to share with everyone as we're wrapping up.
We do have some resources on the event website too. So if
Great.
you want to check that out. So we're a couple minutes over, but totally worth it. I just wanted to thank you all for speaking, and thank you, Heather, for moderating, and for all the participants. I know, like you said, I could have listened to you guys at least for a couple more hours. This is just like a tease. I just want to learn more. I have a real passion for Inuit tattoos as well. So I'm hoping that, you know, this will just be the beginning of a larger conversation outside of, you know, where we're at right now. But If you want to listen to this again, you can, because we're recording the event and it will be posted on the website. So thank you again, everyone. And hopefully we'll get to talk to you in the chat box at the next talk.
Thank you. Thank you, Don. Thank you,
Thank
Heather.
you.
Thank you, Heather.
Nice to
Thanks,
see you
everyone.
all.